What's up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and today I want to bring you guys a Sky Striker Goukis deck profile. And so Gouki are one of the top decks of this current format, mostly because they have the highest ceiling, they're the most powerful deck right now. But generally speaking, when a deck has a very high ceiling, they usually have to sacrifice consistency for that. But Gouki are different. Goukis are still very consistent, and they're one of the more consistent high ceiling decks that we've had in a very long time, and that's why they're one of the top tier decks of this current format. And so let's go ahead and get into this deck profile. This is what I've been testing with and what I found a lot of success with. So let's go ahead and get into the monsters. And so we have a standard ratio of Gouki monsters. We have 3 Suprex, 2 TWISTCOBRA, 2 Headbat, 2 Octostretch, 1 Bear Hug, and 1 Risotto. I think this is the ideal ratio in my opinion. I think you need to play a certain number of Gouki monsters to make sure that you're getting the most value out of your Suprexes and your Headbats. But you still need to have space for other things in your deck as well. And you don't want to play too many Goukis because you don't want to draw like a handful of Gouki monsters. That would be obviously terrible. I mean, you'd still be able to combo, but like it'd be less than ideal. Another thing that I do want to bring up really quickly is that the Goukis aren't actually terrible cards like by themselves. Like they all have pretty unique good effects. So like TWISTCOBRA can increase your Gouki monster's attacks, which can help you like get over bigger monsters, or can help you deal damage, which is really big in these new time rules. I actually think that Gouki can adjust pretty well to these new changes, actually, like better than a lot of other decks, because of cards like TWISTCOBRA and cards like Octostretch, which can protect you from your opponent dealing damage to you. So if you might lose in a certain game, like normally, you can use Octostretch to decrease the damage that you would take, which can potentially save you. And so I do like that as well. Bear Hug also has an effect to help you deal more damage, and so the Gouki monsters actually do have effects to help you adjust to these new time rules, and I think it's one of the better decks considering them, despite it being a combo deck and the combos maybe taking a long time. But once you learn the combos, you can do them pretty quickly. Next we have 2 Marauding Captains, and I like this because it's a combo starter. You have this in any other Gouki and you got your combo, so that's really good. But I also like it more than other cards like Junk Forward because it's better in multiples and it's better mid combo if needed. And so like Junk Forward, you need to have a clear board for it, so it doesn't work if you want to use it mid combo. It doesn't work in multiples. It doesn't work with Hornet Drones, which is actually really big in this deck because we obviously play Sky Striker cards. Those two don't work together. But Marauding Captain doesn't have those contradictions. A Marauding Captain can work with any other card or any other monster in your deck, and it also has the really cool like on-field effect, like the thing where that if you have 2 Marauding Captains, they can't attack. Like you can do a little bit of damage and summon 2 Marauding Captains, and your opponent might not be able to like attack over them, which probably will never come up. But if it does ever happen, you're gonna be really happy that it was this and not like a Junk Forward. Like it's a really interesting effect actually. Or you can have this equipped with Moon Mirror Shield and like some other monsters, and that can also be a neat little trick you can do to deal a little bit more damage and protect yourself. So I do like Marauding Captain better than the other options in this case. I think the only problem with Marauding Captain is that it's particularly weak to cards like Effect Veiler and Infinite Impermanence. But that's fine. I think I'd rather have them stop Marauding Captain than stop my Isolde. Another option is Spell Striker, but despite playing 19 spell cards in this deck, we don't always have the luxury of starting with a spell card in the grave. And so just looking at the deck list right now, like we played 19 spells, yes, but any of the spells in the bottom row, you're not getting into your graveyard before doing any of your plays. And so if you're going first and you have Spell Striker and the spells that you draw are from that bottom row of spells, then Spell Striker is going to be dead. And I don't like that about that. I really don't. And so I felt that I'd rather not have those contradictions. I'd rather like focus on keeping the consistency good because that's what Gouki excel at. Like I don't want to sacrifice consistency for marginal gains in power, which I don't even think Spell Striker does. Like I just don't think it's good enough, especially now when we have so many other options to do the same thing. Next we play 6 Hand Traps, 3 Ash Blossom, and 3 Drolls. This looks pretty standard, but I think these are the best 6 for good reason. And so Ash Blossom is really important considering the other top decks of the format. Thinking about like Sky Strikers, thinking about Trickstar, thinking about Gouki, I really think that Ash Blossom is better than almost anything else, especially against Trickstar, to where Reincarnation can actually just beat you. Like you can actually just lose to Reincarnation. And this was something we didn't have to really deal with before because Trickstars weren't really that popular before Sky Strikers. But this new Sky Striker Trickstar deck is everywhere, and it's actually a huge problem for us. And so the ability to just negate Reincarnation really can save us, because if they reincarnate one of your Gouki monsters that's a 1-of, you just lost a good part of your ceiling. That's one less summon that you can do. Or if they reincarnate you on a suplex effect or a headbat effect, that can also really hurt. And so losing those plays as well as those warrior monsters, those Gouki monsters, really hurts. And so reincarnation is hard to deal with, and Ashe is, I think, the best way to actually deal with reincarnation. And then Droll is important for when you're going second against faster decks. It just keeps you from like losing. So if you lose the die roll to another Gouki player or the Spiral, this will keep you from losing that game. Ashe doesn't necessarily do that. Like, you can play through Ashe some of the time, but Droll you cannot. Droll is a floodgate, and so I felt it necessary to play that. It's also really good against the Trickstar deck too, because if they start with a light stage or a terraforming, or maybe they start with an engage even though they have Candina, they're not going to be able to search reincarnation some of the time, which again can really hurt you. Like, reincarnation is the only thing that you should be worried about in that Trickstar matchup. Like, nothing else they do is really that big of a deal. They generally don't have Widow Anchor because they're going to have Lycoris on the field. Other hand traps are fine, but not as bad as reincarnation. Droll can hurt, but we can play through Droll sometimes. Not play through, but like survive through it. But again, reincarnation is really painful. And so Ashe and Droll are the main hand traps that keep me from losing the game. And the last monster we play is one Ibli. This is obvious, we're playing a lot of Knightmare cards, and so Ibli's really important to the combos. One thing that you're going to notice is that I'm not playing the Predaplant engine, and I decided against that mostly due to it being an inefficient engine that requires far too many resources, despite the increase in power that it brings. I just don't think it's necessary, and it opens you up to getting hand trapped far worse than you do without it. And so like, you have to waste a normal summon and a card in your hand, and if that gets ashed or Widow Anchored, you probably lose that game. But also, you can get drolled on Cobra's effect. That also can really hurt. Versus getting drolled on the Isolde, which isn't really that bad because you're searching like maybe 2 to 3 cards if you're making it with 1 or 2 Gouki monsters. And so, sure, you might get drolled on a Isolde, but that's okay usually. Like, you have the resources afterwards to play next turn, especially if you search a rematch. Versus again, getting drolled on the search of instant fusion essentially just means that you just lost 2 of your cards for an instant fusion, which isn't really that good. Like, it's good, but it's not good enough. It's not like having a rematch. And then it also forces you to play a card like Cobra, which is an engine requirement, can be a brick, and it's hardly ever going to be the reason that you're unable to combo. But rather than drawing a brick that only lets me do the same plays pretty much, I'd rather just not play that brick and play cards that actually help me win. I think the only real benefit to playing the Predaplant engine is that it does help you play through hand traps some of the time, but as you'll see later in this deck profile, we have our own way of doing that. So let's go ahead and move on to the spell cards, or I should say the spell and trap, singular trap. And for those, the first 10 cards that you're going to see in that first row of spells are all just another warrior monster. So like Engage, 3 Hornet Drones, 2 Instant Fusion, 1 Rhoda, and 1 Phantom Knight trap card. Those are all just essentially special summon a warrior monster to help you start your combos. And so these are starter cards, they can be extenders, and they all really help you just stay consistent. And so again, that's one of the things that makes Gouki so good, is that it's so powerful, but still very consistent. But to be consistent, you have to play a lot of consistency cards. You have to play a lot of cards that do the same thing, a lot of cards that are going to get you to where you want to be. And these first 10 spells and trap do that. And now in particular, I am a really big fan of the Sky Striker engine more than like extra junk forwards or extra marauding captains or the Predaplants or anything like that, because while they can be, or especially Engage, so while Engage can be a warrior monster in Hornet Drones, it can also be other things. It can also sometimes draw you a card. It can also sometimes be defense. It can also sometimes be your breaker. And I really enjoy that versus having cards that only serve one role. And I think that's sort of where Yu-Gi-Oh has evolved in the current day and age, to where you really want more cards that serve multiple roles, and this is the best card to do that right now. And there are also just a lot of really neat interactions that come from playing it. And so, for example, if you just activate Engage, like the first thing you do and your opponent doesn't know what you're playing, some people are going to Ashe it. Like, Engage is such a power card that it's mentally in people's heads that they need to stop it, and if they're holding an Ashe, sometimes an average or below average player might just Ashe that, which is going to allow you to resolve your Isolde later on in that turn. Or if your opponent has cherries, and all you do is reveal like Engage and Hornet Drones, so they've only seen Sky Striker cards, and then you activate Hornet Drones, they're probably going to cherries you thinking that you're playing Sky Strikers, and so they're going to cherries you for like Kagari or maybe SHIZUKU, depending on like whether or not they see Engage, but they're just going to lose a card for no reason, and that actually doesn't matter because you're going to normal summon a Gouki monster and kill them. And that's also a really good interaction versus to where if you start off with like a Marauding Captain, they're like, oh, he's obviously playing Gouki, I'm going to cherry his Isolde or his Firewall. But with this, there's at least the possibility of you playing Sky Strikers, so they're kind of forced to either wait or to not do it. Or if they do it, then like that's perfect. And so that's a really interesting interaction. Another thing that I like about these first 10 spell cards is Instant Fusion. And spoiler alert, I do play Invoked RAIDJINA, because it can actually be difficult for some cards to play through that in a simplified game state. And so again, this deck is really focused on comboing off, but it's important to have cards that are still good in simplified game states. And Instant Fusion is one of those cards. Instant Fusion is something that you can just play against a deck like Trickstar, and they're going to struggle to deal with that. So like if you summon RAIDJINA against Trickstar and set itself in defense so it stays on the board, they're going to have a hard time actually getting that off the board. It has 2400 defense. And so they're not attacking over that with anything. They're going to have to make some link plays or something. It's going to be actually ridiculous. It's going to be in your extra monster zone, so they can't out it with Cerberus. So at minimum, they're going to have to make a link 3 for a Ningirsu or a Unicorn to out that. Which is wild that they're going to have to trade all those resources just for one of your cards. And then if it's face up on the field, so let's say it survives a single turn, you have a ability to flip it on your turn, you're going to be able to flip your opponent's Lily Bells face down to prevent them from attacking or stop some of their other plays, flip a Lyco face down so it's not burning you over and over again, and then you can make your play still because it's a warrior monster. And so it's just a really, really good card. Or against the Mirror, or against Spiral, you can flip their monsters face down so they can't link with them. And so now for the final 10 spell cards, these are spell cards that aren't just warrior monsters. We're going to start with 3 Called by the Grave, which I think is necessary in any combo deck. Like I said before, if you're able to combo, you're going to win. The only way that you lose is if you cannot combo, and if you're going first, the only way to stop you is with hand traps, and this stops hand traps. And so this means that like it's going to help you win. Like the more you resolve this, the more you win probably. And so Called by the Grave is just important for any combo deck. But it's also good if you do Brick, which doesn't happen very often, but if you do, you can set this, and it's still a really good defensive card against a deck like Sky Strikers, to where they might get greedy and try to use Raise effect. You banish their raid, negate the effect, and then they just lost their normal summon and their monster for nothing. So that's really big. It can also just be good mid to late game for banishing their links to negate the links on the board. Against Trickstar, it helps deal with Reincarnation's Graveyard effect. It's really good in most matchups, to be honest, so I do like this a lot. Next we have 2 Gouki rematch, and this is sort of a hedge against everyone playing Ghost Bell, because if your opponent Ghost Bells you, you can just search another rematch and activate that, because Ghost Bell negates the activation. And so even though rematch is once per turn, you can just play another copy. So that's actually really big, and you can do that anytime you want, especially if you have like an extra Hornet Drones or extra Gouki monster, or you have that extra link material. You can afford not using one of your Gouki search effects to get another one of this instead. So rematch is really important at 2. It also gives you a follow-up, so like if let's say your board gets broken somehow, you can use this as a follow-up to still play next turn. Or if you get stopped and you can't combo, you're going to need to start your plays next turn somehow, and this is a way you can do that. This is a 1 card Isolde in that regard, and so rematch is very good at 2. I've really enjoyed it actually. And then for the equip cards, we have 1 Divine Sword Phoenix Blade and 1 Moon Mirror Shield. Divine Sword Phoenix Blade is mandatory. Like you have to play this. If you're not playing this, then I honestly don't even know how you do your combos without negging super hard. So this is really, really important, but a lot of people forget that it's also an equip card, so you can just equip it to your monsters and attack. And 300 doesn't seem like a lot, but sometimes with these new time rules, you got to take all the little bit of damage that you can do. And so just attacking over, I've seen players just like equip this and just like pass, and people can't get over it against a deck like Trickstars. I think, yeah, ARG Hartford on stream, I forgot who Blake was playing against. Yeah, it was like the guy that got 2nd place, yeah. And on stream, Blake bricks really bad. All he does is summon TWISTCOBRA, equip Phoenix Blade, pass, no hand traps. The other dude is playing Trickstars, and he cannot even get over this without making like a break sword to destroy it. So he has to waste all of these resources just to deal with the TWISTCOBRA, equipped with Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. And it was absolutely ridiculous. And sometimes plays like that just come up to where having a monster with more attack is useful. And that's also sort of the theory behind Moon Mirror Shield. And so there are a lot of options here. And I was on Axe of Fools for a while, but I don't think Axe of Fools really does anything right now. Like if you look at the format, it doesn't do anything against Trickstar. They don't have monsters that do anything. At most, you're going to be negating like a Lycoris, which is like, oh, I guess okay at best. Like you're not getting burned, but then they have a 2600 Lyco, which is kind of ridiculous. You could do that, but that's not good. Doesn't do anything against Sky Strikers. It doesn't do anything against Gouki because they're probably ending on Goblin. Doesn't do anything against Spiral because they're gonna end on also maybe Goblin, but also Resort, maybe Sleeper with Last Resort. Like, there's really nothing that you can negate that you want to negate, and so it really just doesn't do anything. Another option is Overdone Burial. That card's pretty good, but the problem is like the whole levels thing, and I don't really like that. We're also not playing that many monsters that we want to like special summon back. So like, we have 20 monsters, but only like 11 of them are actually Goukis, or only 13 of them are even warriors, and so bringing something back usually isn't really useful. Like 7 out of your 20 monsters are hand traps and Ipley, which is not good. So I'm not really a huge fan of Overdone Burial. A Moon Mirror Shield, in my opinion, is the best one to use. It's going to guarantee that you're attacking over an opponent's monster somehow. It's going to guarantee that you're able to do a little bit of damage. It's going to guarantee that you're doing something in your battle phase. And like, again, these new time rules are so important to like think about in your deck building, because you're going to win and lose games based on this. And the ability to use these rules to your advantage is going to be how you can go from like average to above average in this game. And so, or it's one way that you can do that. I shouldn't say it's the way, but it's one way if you really need to win more games. And so the ability to like guarantee damage in the battle phase regardless of what you do in your main phase is going to be useful, especially considering how long some of your combos can take. So if you're running out of time on the clock in like a game 3, for example, and you don't really have time to do your full combo, you just got to do a little bit of damage, what you can do if you draw Moon Mirror Shield is just equip it to something. Like, you can summon Octastretch, equip Moon Mirror Shield, and attack over a Borlo. Like, you can just do anything. And so I really do like it for that. And so just the ability to do damage is important, and also the ability for your opponent not to be able to attack over your monsters is important. And so it's a good card. I do like it over the others. So next, let's move on to the spicy part of the deck, in my opinion, and that is the other Sky Striker cards. We have one Widow Anchor and one Eagle Booster. And Eagle Booster is special because Sky Strikers don't even normally play this card, but I think it's actually amazing in this deck because you can search it with Engage and then use it to protect your Isolde. And so they can't Ash your Isolde, they can't Ogre it, they can't Gamma it, and Permanence, none of that. It pretty much guarantees that your Isolde's effect is going to resolve, and then once that resolves, you can just like chain block all of your other important effects. And so like it just gets everything started and protects you, and almost guarantees that you're going to get some sort of play going. And so I really do like this. And whenever you have like an extra Engage, so if you open like 2 Engage Warrior Monster, Engage Hornet Bit Warrior Monster, you can search Eagle Booster to again sort of play around those hand traps. And it's just really underrated too. Like, I don't know why people aren't playing this card. We win by being able to do our combos. We lose by not being able to combo. So why would we not play a searchable card that guarantees our ability to do the combos? It just made so much sense to me. And so I'm a huge fan of Eagle Booster right now. And then next we have Widow Anchor. And I like Widow Anchor a lot too because you have to acknowledge the fact that there are going to be games that you won't be able to combo. And so in those games, I want to have at least either really strong standalone cards or searchable defense to maybe give me 1 to 2 extra turns to hopefully draw into the combo. And so Widow Anchor allows me to do that with a singular Engage. And so even though I only play 6 hand traps, those hand traps plus 3 Engage plus the 1 Widow Anchor equals 10 total possible defensive cards, which it can really helps in a format where every single deck is playing a ton of hand traps. And so every deck's going to be able to slow you down if they have them, but this means that you can slow them down too, and then play next turn and then win. The only downside to Widow Anchor is that sometimes you'll get cherried if you have 2 warrior monsters on the field, and if that happens, there's kind of nothing you can do. Like, we're already playing 3 Called by the Graves. Like, there's no other way to like negate or stop cherries. If you read it, you just have to play around it sometimes, and if not, you gotta prepare to play Risotto plus Bear Hug Beatdown. So these ain't gonna stop you there, and these are gonna be bricks in those scenarios, but I think it's worth it. I think it's definitely worth it. And then the final spell card that we play is 1 Soul Charge, obviously. For the extra deck, pretty standard, we play 2 Isolde, 1 Link Karibo, 1 Mermaid, Cerberus, Phoenix, 2 Goblin, because I do like to end on Goblin. I've seen other people play like 2 Cerberus or 2 Phoenix. You can really go either way. Or you could take out one of the flex spots for a second Phoenix as well, or a second Cerberus, whatever you want. I just like 2 Goblin, that's my preference. I think targeting is really important right now, especially with Sky Strikers. All their stuff targets, so I think that's important. 1 Unicorn, 1 Trigate Wizard, 1 Firewall, and 1 Borreload. I think all of these are like necessary. These are all pretty standard. You gotta play them. We all know what they do. Then we have TOPOLOGIC TRISBAENA, and this is mostly for trap decks and sometimes Sky Strikers, but I think the really important thing about this card is actually its ability to win the game within your main phase. And so again, with these new time rules, we do have to take this into account within our deck building. I think that, like, again, we're playing a combo deck, and sometimes your turns can take a long time. Sometimes you don't have time to get to the battle phase. Sometimes you just have like your main phase and that's it. And so the ability to deal damage in your main phase is actually really important. And again, it is also good against trap decks and Sky Strikers to an extent, but I think that this is the main allure of it. Like, in your main phase, you can just make this. It's just a link 3. It's pretty easy. And just summon a Hornet Drones or a Phantom Knight trap to the zone it points to, and maybe deal 500 to 1,000 damage, then get into your battle phase really quick, deal a little bit more damage. And I think that's just way faster than doing full combo. And so if time's running out, you might not have time to do full combo. You might not have time to do all that link summoning and shuffling and searching and doing all that stuff to make sure you do your combo correctly. Sometimes you just make a quick link 3, make a TRISBAENA, summon Hornet Drones, clear the back row, deal 1,000, equip Moon Mirror Shield to it. That's already like a solid amount of damage. And so again, it's just faster than doing full combo. Sometimes it's going to save you. Next we play 1 KAGARI and 1 RAIDJINA. One card that I really wish I had space for here was Sky Striker SHIZUKU, because again, we have a little bit more emphasis on the Sky Strikers on this deck than a normal Gouki deck would, or even a normal Sky Striker Goukis deck would. And I really value that, and I miss having that in-phase search, especially when the game state is simplified, especially when you're not able to combo, especially when you do just want a few more resources. I really think that it would be good. Or even when you just have those extra Hornet Drones and you want to make a few extra Link monsters, this can be good. Or again, if you need to do a little bit of damage, have the extra Hornet Drones, and then on the end, summon a SHIZUKU to lower your opponent's attack by maybe like 200, 300, 400. Then all your attacks are maybe doing a little bit more there than they would. And so it does really come up. And so if there was one change I would make to the extra deck, yeah, actually I really like this extra deck. I don't think I would change anything, but if I could play a 16th card, it'd probably be SHIZUKU. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to the side deck. And my mindset going into the side deck, and something I've mentioned multiple times in this video, is I think that as long as we're able to play, we're able to win. And so the side deck is mostly focused around just being able to play the game. We're not trying to stop our opponents in most cases. We're trying to ensure that we're able to play. We're not stopping their engine, we're stopping them from stopping us. And so we want to be able to do that. We want to complicate the game state. And then if that happens, we're going to be able to just outplay other decks with our combos. And so we're going to start with 3 Kaijus for the Mirror Match, Spirals, and Sky Strikers. Against combo decks, it just deals with the oppressive card, whether it be Sleeper, Trigate, or the thing that's blocking your extra monster zone. Then against Sky Strikers, it's cutting off their Widow Anchors. And I just think that's really important, because before I was having a huge issue in the Sky Striker matchup, because they might have 1 Widow Anchor, 2 Widow Anchors, 3 Widow Anchors, and a Shark Cannon. Like, they could have anything they want. And if they had those, even just one defensive card sometimes would be really hard to deal with. And I tried things like Twin Twisters or MST, or even Jamming Wave, which I do also play in the side deck, but I tried cards like that. And the problem was that if they set multiples, I wouldn't always know where it was. And so I didn't want to play like Twin Twister. They have 3 back row. I miss the 1 Widow Anchor, and then they Widow Anchor a soul and I lose. Or sometimes you hit a Widow Anchor and you're like, okay, cool, you got that green light, and then you make your soul and have a second Widow Anchor for it. And I just did not like those scenarios. Plus the ability to get stopped by hand traps as well. But Kaijus will completely shut off their Widow Anchors, their Shark Cannons, and if they don't have a multi-roll or an area 0, it's going to shut them off for their next turn as well. Unless they link with it, but you know, what are they linking with just the Kaiju? And so it can be sort of a floodgate and a defensive card in that regard. Or a breaker card. It's really weird the role it serves in that case. It's interesting. But I do really like it in that matchup. Next we have 1 Jamming Wave, because again, you got to be able to hit traps, you got to be able to hit set defensive cards, and we can search this with Engage. Next we have 3 red reboots. This is also to play through traps. It's really good against Altergeist. And despite having to pay half my life points, I'm very happy to be trading a little bit of fire, a little bit of card advantage for a big boost in tempo. Like, being able to actually play means that we win. And so I don't care that my opponent gets an extra card or that I pay half my life points, because their life points are going to be hit 0 by the end of this turn. Next we have 2 Typhoons for similar reasons. Next we have 3 Shared Ride, and Shared Ride affects how we search. It's similar to Droll, but I like this way more because it complicates the game state versus Droll simplifying it. And again, in Gouki, we thrive in complex game states. We thrive when we have more cards, because when both players have a lot of cards, we're going to be able to outplay our opponents in most cases, so it's more favorable for us. Now the reason we main deck Droll and not main deck this is because Droll actually does something when going second versus this not doing anything in that scenario. And so that's really the only problem with it, but you side it in every game that you're going first. Then the final card, and one of my least favorites, but you kind of have to play, is Evenly Matched. And Evenly Matched is just important for going second and clearing your opponent's boards. It's another out to the Knightmare board other than board load, and it sucks to really ever trade your tempo in this deck, because in a lot of cases your tempo is how you win. You're going to win by using a lot of your tempo, trading it for card advantage, making these huge boards, and then attacking your opponent for game. But whenever you evenly match, you cannot do that. Like, you cannot actually win the turn that you resolve evenly matched. And so when doing that, you always give your opponent a chance for the counterplay. You give them the chance to break your board. You give them the control to potentially end the game on their turn in time, which is something that you don't want. It opens you up to drawing. So like, let's say you have 10 minutes left in the match. You evenly match your opponent. They spend some time thinking about what to banish. You build your board, and you might make a huge board. Actually, it might be the perfect board, but your opponent could have no out to it at all, right? And then they just spend time, you're using time to do the combo. You're not winning that turn. Then on their turn, they just gotta like do some stupid stuff. Like they can just, twiddle their thumbs for 2 minutes while time runs out. And even though they have no way of winning, you might draw because of that. Or if you lost game 1, you might lose because of that. And so evenly match is important because you can break their boards, but it just really sucks to trade that tempo. And then on top of that, some of the other top decks can still play around it. So like Trickstars have Reincarnation. They can just reincarnate it away, or just keep a Lycris on board so you take a bunch of damage in your main phase 2 and again like losing time. Sky Strikers can just chain all of their quick play spell cards, keep a multi-roll, and then plus in the end phase so they can play around it. Spirals will just keep Sleeper and then beat your ass with Sleeper. I think Altergeist just loses this deck, but Altergeist are terrible anyways. But yeah, most of the top decks like Sky Strikers, Trickstars, and Spirals and Gouki can play around this. Gouki can just negate it with Trigate. So again, decks can play around this. It's not like a blowout card, but it is very powerful. And it sucks to just trade your tempo for it. But anyways, guys, this has been my Sky Striker Gouki deck profile. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them in the comments section below. If you have any suggestions, also let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.